Okay, I'm going to show you how to set up a two-point perspective to draw something like this. I'm just going to point out that we have a vanishing point on the right and we have a vanishing point on the left. And everything is either drawn from that vanishing point or the other to lay out the length and width of the building. We're also able to establish, for instance, the widths of each one of these little sections on the crosswalk, um, and the width of the sidewalk, the height of the curb, the dash lines, drive lines down the middle of the road, everything. So everything comes from either one of those vanishing points. So I'm going to talk today about the layout of that and how to get started. So the first thing that I want to reference is the section in their chapter on two-point perspectives. This page here, I'll just kind of zoom in on it, explains the concepts. So you have your vanishing point right and left, and then your horizon line is the height of the person or the observer. And we are going to be establishing the bottom edges of the building here. They're called the baseline of the building. And the positions of those right and left vanishing points obviously changes what we end up seeing here for a perspective. And it changes the angle that we look at the building and everything. It kind of moves that person that's observing the building around. On the following page, and this is in your book in the chapter on perspectives, in the following page here, this is the plan setup. So you do a plan setup when you have an actual footprint of a building, which all of you do. You already have your first floor plan. We're going to end up using this plan setup to set up a two-point perspective. But for now, I'm going to show you how to just the concepts of the two-point perspective. But when you do your plan setup, you're going to be able to figure out where your vanishing points are going to be here, and you're going to also establish your distance away from the building. This is the SP stands for station point, or this is like supposed to represent where the person's standing. There's your cone of vision that we talked about in the one-point perspective, and then there's your center of view. And the center of view, by the way, and the point that you put the building on the picture plane do not necessarily have to be the same locations. In fact, I would avoid doing that because nobody goes and looks at a building and stares directly at the corner of it like that. So you want to think about how the end result is going to look. Also notice there's from the edge of the building to this vanishing point here is a bit wider, a longer distance than the vanishing point to this edge of the building. And that's because we are tilting the building. This is the baseline of the building on the left and the right. And the corner of the building is lined right up on the picture plane. The corner of the building can be used as our vertical measuring line because anything that's directly on the picture plane can be scaled. And the way we establish where our vanishing points are is to draw a line from the station point with a line that's parallel. That's what this says right here, parallel to the right side of the baseline of the building until it runs into the picture plane, and that's our vanishing point on our right. And then this line on this side is going to be the same thing. This edge needs to be parallel to that baseline of the building and needs to run until it hits the picture plane. And that establishes our vanishing point on the left. So the first part of today's lesson, I'm just going to show you how to set up a two-point perspective, just if you were just doing it for fun. And then the second, I will do another video that actually shows you how to set up all of these critical points in plan first, based off of your floor plan, and then we'll translate that into what the perspective would look like. So these are good. These are the good pages to pay attention to in your chapter that give you an understanding of how to set up that two-point perspective based off of a floor plan that you've already established. On the following pages, you get an idea similar to how we were setting up a grid for one-point perspective. We're going to set up grids for our two-point perspective, and this illustrates how we're going to use two new points that are used to measure. They're measuring points. This is measuring point left, measuring point right. So measuring point right measures through the building along the bottom edge or the ground line. We can scale the ground line, and we can scale this vertical measuring line. So those are the two places I can actually measure something to scale and then project it around the building. And so I'll show you how those two measuring points work and how we figure out where to place them. And then, like I said, we'll set up the whole floor plan. So I'm going to show you how to set up something similar to this. And so I'm going to grab just underneath here I have a brand new piece of paper, and we need to start off with make sure we're auto-focused here. We're going to start off with a ground line. Make sure we're focused really well. And I'm going to draw with red. You can see it really well. And want to make sure I'm staying in camera here. So let's put our ground line right here. So this is going to be our ground line. And I'll put next to that GL for ground line. That's off the page. Let's do it here. GL. That's our ground line. And then I'm going to take my scale, and using the same scale my floor plan has been measured at, so that's 1/4 inch equals a foot for all of you, I'm going to place a new line parallel to that ground line above it at the height that my observer is. So I'm going to make that 6 feet just to make it easier to locate. So I just created a little dot right there, and because I've got a rolling ruler, I can just line it up with my ground line until it runs into that dot. If you don't have a rolling ruler, measure 6 feet off of that first line twice so you can make the second line parallel. And that blue line now that I have is going to be my horizon line. So I'll put HL next to that. That's horizon line. I next want to define my vertical measuring line, and I'm going to put that right about here. This is going to be the line that I can measure all kinds of different heights from. And then I need to make marks for 1 foot increments along that line. And then I'm going to start measuring from think of this as zero, the 0, 0, 0 point for X, Y, and Z coordinates. I can measure height along this line, I can measure length along this line and this line in the opposite directions. So I'm going to just take my scale, and using the same 1/4 inch scale, I'm going to make a little mark at 1 foot increments along that vertical measuring line. That should be right on the 6 foot mark there. And I'll just go until I don't have any more room. So that's 13 feet. And then I'm going to measure the same 1 foot increments this way. And when you do this, and I do have a video that shows you how to do this in AutoCAD. And when you do this in AutoCAD, it goes pretty quickly, especially, you know, you can use the ray command, you can use the divide command to divide these lines up into these equal segments. All right, I've got enough lines there. So now I need to decide where my vanishing points are. I'll just use green for my vanishing points, I guess. So this is where I'm just going to kind of set something up just for fun. I'm not worrying, you know, normally if you had a plan set up here, you would figure out where your vanishing points are based off of your plan. but I'm going to do this 3-to-1 ratio thing that I like to use. So on one side of the vertical measuring line, you want the vanishing point to be 3 times further away from that vertical measuring line than the other side. And it doesn't make any difference which side you decide to do that on. I'm going to put it on this side. I'm going to put my vanishing point way over here. So this is my vanishing point right. And then I'm going to put another vanishing point about 1/3 of that distance on the other side. So this is about at 24, so I'm going to put that about 8 feet on the other side. Put it right here. Doesn't have to be exact, but you just kind of create that ratio. Okay, so this is vanishing point left. So now I have vanishing points, ground line, horizon line, and I want to create my building height and width. So to create height, I would count up the height that I want my building to be. I'm going to make it 10 feet tall. So right here is where I'm going to go through my vanishing points to that mark right there that I just added with my pencil. And then I want the building to be 15 feet wide. That's at 15 feet right there. And 12 feet long. Looks like I made just enough marks there. So those are the critical measurements. And notice I'm measuring all those on those vertical and horizontal lines because that's measured to scale. So from the base line of the vertical measuring line, we will draw a construction line to that vanishing point. And then from that vanishing point to the mark that I made on my vertical measuring line. And then we'll go from that mark to the vanishing point left. And then from vanishing point left to the baseline again. So what we have here is this plane is one side of the building, this plane is the other. Because this vanishing point is so much closer to the edge of the building, we're going to see a lot more foreshortening on this side, and we're going to see a lot more of the front face of the building on this side, or whatever side that you've chosen to kind of focus on a little bit more. So it's more interesting to tilt your building a little bit. Don't be looking at the corner at an exact 45-degree angle. If you put your two vanishing points exactly the same distance on either side, that's the kind of 2-point perspective you're going to get. It won't be quite as dynamic. So now to figure out where your these measurements are going to be, this is the part that you're just going to have to trust me. I'm going to eyeball it a little bit. I'm going to create 2 measuring points, and when we get into laying this out, starting with the floor plan, I will explain. You'll see how to exactly figure out where these measuring points are supposed to go. But I'm using kind of the same rules where I want the first measuring point to be a certain distance away from the vertical measuring line. So I'm kind of like going a little bit less than 1/3 of this whole distance. And then on this side, you want that to be about 1/3 of whatever that distance is. And that should be okay to start with, just for playing around today. And I'm going to label these measuring point right and measuring point left. And we are going to figure out the width of the building by going to my measuring point left and lining it up with where the 15-foot mark is on the ground line. And we want to see where it crosses the baseline of the building. Where it crosses the baseline of the building is supposed to be representing where 15 feet is in the perspective. So that's a 15-foot distance right there that we just measured. On this side, if I go from measuring point right through the same point that I measured on that side for the representing 12 feet, I'm going to make a mark on the edge of the baseline again, where it crosses the baseline, and then draw a line through that intersection that is representing 12 feet in that direction. So if I go back and erase my construction lines that I have here, there's our building boundaries. So I now have drawn a box basically that's 10 feet by 15 feet by 12 feet, and I've drawn it based off of these dimensions. by going through the perspective. So let's put a few more features in here. I'm going to draw a door on here. So we're going to use the same height measurement tools that we used in the 1 point perspective, where you count up your 1 foot increments here. This is 6 feet, so that's 7 feet right there. If I want to find out what does 7 feet look like all along the edge of that building on that side, I want to draw a construction line across like that. That's 7 feet all the way across. And for windows, the sill height, let's say, is at 2 feet. So I want to line that up with the 2 foot increment on the vertical measuring line and put another construction line in there. The width of the door, let's say the door's edge, if we're going to go back and reference this, I want the door to be 1 foot in, and then the width of the door to be 3 feet. And then these windows are going to be have 1 foot spaces between them, and they'll each be 2 feet. So we'll just kind of lay that out. So 1 foot true scale is, there's 1 foot, but I've got to pass it through my measuring point left to see where, if I drew a line from there through that point, where it would cross the baseline. So that little mark right there is where 1 foot in from the edge of this building is. And if I draw that line right up to my construction line, that's a 7 foot door. So then if I go over 1, 2, 3 feet, so I want to line up my measuring point left with that new point, and then where it crosses the baseline of the building again, draw the other side of the door. So I can reinforce those lines and darken those up a little bit, and I've got a door correctly sized and spaced on the side of the building. So let's go 1 foot in from the edge of the building through that same measuring point left, make a little mark, and then the windows are 2 feet wide. So I'm just going to make a mark where I just keep track of where I've been. Then I'm going to go 1 foot over, and then 2 feet over again for the next window, and then 1 foot over, and then 2 feet over again for the last window. So everywhere I've got these little marks where they're crossing the baseline, I want to line up my straight edge and draw my construction lines between the sill and the head. And those marks are going to set up the distances for the windows correctly spaced. Need to go in from this side on that one, so that we have the 2 foot wide windows with the 1 foot increments between. And let's add those lines in there, make those look nice and sharp so we can see those windows a little bit better. And now I've got all the windows on that side. Let's do a couple of windows on this side, and then I'm just going to add a few more details here just to show you how to move around and add additional features to this. So again, I want to use that same height and go to that measuring point left this time. And this is a 12 foot wide building, so I want there to be 2 feet over for the first window and 2 feet over, so that takes away or actually let's go 1 foot over and 1 foot over, and then we'll go 3 feet and 3 feet. So make these windows here on this side a little bit wider. So this time I'm going to use the measuring point right. I'm going to go 1 foot over, and then 1, 2, 3 feet. See, 1, 2, 3 feet, and then 1 foot over, and then 1, 2, 3 feet. I wasn't very neat with my measuring over here, I can tell. This is where CAD also would make that a lot more precise. So there's my 1 foot measurement, and then my 3 foot wide window. And actually I'm going to go in the opposite direction and go 1 foot over and then go 1, 2, 3 foot. That's going to be a little bit more symmetrical, isn't it? So go to that 1 foot in from the edge of the building, and through the 3-foot mark from there. So we take our straight edge again, line it up with those intersections, put it in our construction lines. And I forgot to put the 2-foot sill height in there, so I'll do that now. So mark where the 2-foot mark is using that vertical, the vanishing point left. And these are those 3-foot wide windows on that side. And that's how it works. So we're able to move around the space. You can see how we're using the ground line and the vertical measuring line to actually scale things and create some features on the surface of that building. So I'm going to add a new feature to the front. I want there to be an awning over these doors and windows on the front, just like this. This is the awning I'm going to create right here. So I'm going to do that by first of all deciding where I want my awning to be. I want it to be at 8 feet, so just a little bit above the door here. I'm going to go through my vanishing point left and just decide how far I want that awning to stick out beyond the building. I decided that's about right. And then I'm just going to make a mark for the thickness of the awning here. It's just going to be a square, flat awning. Nothing fancy. And then using my straight edge, I'm going to create a corner. This is where the corner of the awning is. Now these 2 points that I just created by intersecting these lines from this vanishing point can be used to establish the rest of the awning across the front of the, or the right side, I should say, of the building. So I'm just going to put those in first as very light construction lines. And then I need to make sure that I'm also drawing the line from the edge of the awning, where the edge of the awning hits the face of the wall. We're going to be able to see that. And right there where that line intersects this wall on the right hand side, I can go from that point through the vanishing point on the left and project that line out until it intersects this line that I've drawn across that represents the bottom edge of the awning. And now I know where to put my line at the edge of the awning on the other side. And then I could reinforce these lines here, make them a bit darker. So there's the front face of my awning right there.